I once had a bird, its name was Enza. I opened the window and influenza. Welcome back to the weekly crypto review. And that was a rhyme that was chanted by kids during the 1918 Spanish flu outbreak. Humans are a remarkably resilient species. Ring Around the Rosie is another one. It's a rhyming chant about the Black Death. When our kids are chanting about horrible things going on in their games of play, you got to look at things and say, it could be worse. As always, if the information you get here is valuable, please like, subscribe, and share. Those are the most important things you can do. They help me with the YouTube and library algorithms. If you really feel like helping out, you can go to cryptocureencies.tv/support. I've got my crypto addresses up here. Let's take a look at what's going on in the news. So, couple things. Let's actually look at this one first. We all know that the government's talking about a bailout, and they're not only are they talking about bailing out failing companies, they're talking about bailing out everybody, including us. My last video talked about that. And the people who did the 2008-2009 bailout said this one should be even bigger. Great, fantastic. Here's the problem. If you've been watching the broader markets, you know that there have been a lot of companies who have spent the last 10 years taking all their profits and using them to buy back their own stock. Nothing illegal about that, nothing shady about that. The problem is when you can brag about the fact that you are in the longest bull market in history, you have to realize that you are also necessarily at the end of that bull market. Not every company bought back their own stock. Companies like Apple, Berkshire Hathaway, they all took a bunch of profits and kept it as cash. Why? Well, they had no idea this virus was going to happen, but they did understand that the markets were going to drop and drop significantly. They had to. So they took a lot of cash so that they could weather the lean times. That's a smart company. That's a company that when everything else drops, when the bottom happens in the stock market, you might think about investing in it. Not investment advice ever, but those are the type of companies that make sense to invest in because they're smart with their money. So one of the things I've been doing is I sent a letter to my congressman, not my senator, my congressman. Why? Because Congress, the House of Representatives, holds the purse strings of the government. If there's going to be a bailout, it's going to go through the House of Representatives. So I wrote my congressman and said, hey, I have no problem with the government sending money to small businesses. They deserve it. They are the backbone of this country. And they need to survive. But if you're going to bail out large corporations, you need to put a clause into whatever legislation you put out that says if this company, if this corporation bought back its own shares within the last year, 2019 and 2020, then it should be ineligible for any money from the government. Because they made a poor business choice. They should have to live with the consequences of that choice. That's what capitalism is all about. You make good choices, your company grows. You make bad choices, your company doesn't. It suffers. So in the links below the video, I'm going to have a link to where you can look up your own U.S. congressperson and send them a letter, send them an email saying, hey, make sure there's a clause in whatever legislation saying that if the company, because here's the problem. Trump is saying, hey, they should not use this money for corporate buybacks. I absolutely agree with that. They should not. But how are you going to stop them? Well, if they're a company that did corporate buybacks, they have proven that they are incapable of wisely using money. So don't give them any. It's as simple as that. So yeah, that's, and this is going to be huge. This is going to be devastating for the economy. This is going, and of course, none of this, None of this is tax money. Your taxes are not going to be raised to do this. This is all going to be new money that the government creates out of thin air, new debt. We're going to see the debt, it's at 23 trillion and some change. They're throwing out trillion-dollar numbers right now. So it's going to be another 5 or 10 trillion dollars before this is all done. So we're going to have a debt of 30 trillion or more. The economy can't handle that. This could end our monetary system as we know it. Now, before you panic, understand that this is not the first time this has happened in my lifetime. 1971, Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. That was a change. That changed our monetary system as we knew it. So it's not necessarily going to be, everybody out grabbing guns and hoarding food. That's not what I expect. And if you've watched The Big Short, you also understand that just like the banks, the government can actually print the money. So they have the means to keep this failing system going far longer than it should. It should have collapsed 4 years ago, if not earlier. But the government has the means to keep it going, and they are going to keep it going for as long as they possibly can. So which means that it's only going to get worse. When it does actually collapse because it can no longer support its own weight, it's going to be massively bad for everyone economically. This has the potential to be that event. We don't know yet. So, what are we looking at? How do we survive this? How do we get to a point where this actually is beneficial to us? I know that the title says Surviving a Black Swan. I don't want to survive. I want to thrive. I want to do better. I want this to end up being a benefit to me. How do you do that? Well, let's look at a couple things. First off, we'll look at gold and silver real quick, because this is where people run to whenever there is a panic. People run to. And what these charts, these are from goldsilver.com, what these charts show you is that gold and silver both, in the 2008 financial crisis, gold and silver both crashed. Okay, 29.5% for gold, 57.5% for silver. But then over the next couple of years, gold went up, and it went up massively. It went up by 166% in just under 3 years. And silver went up by 448% in 2.5 years. Okay? So we're talking around 3 years for gold and silver to recover. What about crypto? Well, if we look at what's going on now, and we're looking at the 7-day, because this is the weekly review, we're looking at the 7-day numbers. Bitcoin is already up almost 15.5% over this week. Let's see here. Ethereum is up 6.25%. Let's see. Litecoin just over 10%. EOS 14.68%. Where are we going? Chainlink is down 6%. Okay, that's one down out of how many I just gave? Cardano, up 7.58%. Things are looking much better. Don't believe me? Let's look at the charts. Here's the weekly. We're back to the weekly. Not just because it's the weekly review, but because I want to show you what the weekly chart looks like. We've got this beautiful green candle. Okay, now it's saying 7.5%. Let's see what we come up with here. We want to start this from the bottom of the body of the candle, because that is where this week started. Okay, it dropped down here to 43 something, 43, 45 or thereabouts, but it came back up. But the candle body, the bottom of the real body, is where the week started. So we start there, and we take it to where the current price is, which is about there. So yeah, I'm showing 21.66%. We have recovered 21% of the 40% that we lost. And you can see that. We're halfway back up this red candle. We lost 40% last week. We've regained 20% this week. Now, unlike the stock market, and let's go to DJI, I believe is what I want. Yes. And let's go back to the daily, because the daily there we go. And let's get off auto. The daily, we've had all of these down days, and then we had the massive drops starting on, let's see, well, yeah, let's start last week, which would have been the 13th or thereabouts. So right about here is where this last week drop, drop, up, drop, up, drop, up. So we are having up and down days. It's very, very whipsaw. That's normal in the stock market, okay? But we still dropped a massive amount. We dropped from its height at nearly 30,000. We dropped all the way down to 20,000, below 20,000, down to as low as 18,000, 18.8. And while we've got an update today, and we had one yesterday, we're early in the morning. This is 9 o'clock my time, so we're looking at 11 a.m., just before lunch Eastern time. We're about halfway through the day. It's possible that it might be an update, but it's up by 368 points. It's dropped as much as 2,000 points in a day. This isn't strong recovery. This is very anemic. This is that, not really the dead cat bounce. It is that hope that people have that maybe this is the end and we'll recover and we'll go back to where we were. I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening at all. And so when we look at cryptocurrency, Bitcoin specifically, and we're looking at the daily. You remember how we were going sideways? Well, now we are actually going up. Bitcoin specifically is recovering, as are other cryptocurrencies. We're seeing a recovery. We're seeing a lot of green, and we're seeing high double digits, 10% or more in recovery. So while gold and silver took 2.5 to 3 years to recover, I absolutely believe that Bitcoin, when it comes up, it's going to recover. We have the opportunity to recover very quickly, within weeks, a month or two at most. So again, we're going to have to watch this line at 10.5. The line at 10.5, we'll go back to weekly here. The line at 10.5 is resistance. It's going to bounce. It has a high probability of bouncing off again. Okay, that's fine. I don't think it's going to drop like it did last time, because the last time it dropped due to highly unforeseen circumstances. This was a black swan. If you don't know what a black swan is, let me tell you real quickly. A black swan is any disastrous but completely unforeseen event in the markets. Okay? So black swan is something that causes the market to panic, but it's something that could not have been in any way seen earlier. Well, a virus coming from China and infecting 200,000 people, that's not something anyone could have predicted. Anyone in the markets would there's no way they would have predicted that would happen. Certainly not at this point. We were all saying we're going to go into recession next March. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what the market says next week and the week after and the next few months. I suspect, because we are, go back here to Dow Jones, we are at this point, we're going to pull this up a little bit to see it. We are currently, from our highs to our current low, which is, we're going to take it right there where it closes off, we're down 31.19%. Well, a drop of 10% is a correction. A drop of 20% is a recession. We're down 30%. At 40%, it becomes a deep recession. Technically, you don't have a recession until you have 2 consecutive quarters of contraction in the GDP. So we can't call this an official recession at this point. The fact that we have dropped 30%, 31%, not quite a third of the total value of our stock exchange has just been wiped out. In what, 4 weeks? 5 weeks total. That is massive loss. So yes, and these markets being as mature as they are, it's like a battleship. You can't just turn a battleship 180 degrees. It's going to take miles to slow down, miles to turn, and then you finally, eventually, a couple hours later, come back to where you started the turn. Well, that's what this market is like. It's going to take time to slow it down, stop it, and reverse it. The only reason it didn't take so much time, or it seems like it didn't take so much time to stop it here and reverse it and drop it, is because we had all this time here that we had built up. It was and still is highly overvalued, extremely overvalued. It still is. It needs to drop a whole bunch more. It needs to go through a massive correction that was not allowed to happen in 2008. If we can do that, and it's not going to be a matter of choice. The government certainly doesn't want that to happen. They want this to go back up and go back up to record territory. Certainly Trump wants this to go up into record territory because he believes, and not incorrectly, that a good economy is what's going to get him reelected. This is true. At this point, no one's blaming him for this virus. So he's free and clear of that. He didn't cause the market to drop. No one is blaming him for that. So even with a bad economy, chances are he's going to get reelected because of what he did over the past 4 years. This is simply something, again, it's a black swan. No one could have predicted this. So no one can blame him for it. So yeah, he's going to probably get reelected. These corrections are healthy for an asset, whether it's stock, commodities, or Bitcoin. Corrections are healthy for it because it shakes out all the weak hands and it leaves only those people who really truly believe in the product or the asset. The same goes with Bitcoin. As it dropped, only the strongest hands held on to it. Those strong hands, when it bottomed out, let's go back to a daily chart. When it bottomed out, those strong hands came back the next day and started buying up. And we went sideways for a while. Now we're heading back up, and we're heading up very well, very strongly heading up. This is the one asset that actually is showing signs of recovery. Fantastic. That's what we need. That's what we expect. And that is how I expect to come out of this at a benefit, because as the price of Bitcoin goes up, because remember, most people have no idea about Bitcoin. And even those in the more mainstream areas, they only know about Bitcoin. They don't know about the altcoins. They don't know the difference between Bitcoin and an altcoin. They don't know anything about that. So they're going to be hearing about Bitcoin. And you better believe that if this upward trend continues for the next week or two, every cable news channel is going to be talking about Bitcoin's recovery and how it shrugged off this massive 40% drop in a single day and has returned to near $10,000. It only has to get near $10,000. It doesn't have to go above it. When it does go above it, then they're going to start talking about it daily, about how it's so much better, how it has apparently proven its value. This is where people are going to start paying attention. Once Bitcoin gets above $10,000 and stays there, the cable news channels are going to be talking about how Bitcoin has proved its thesis. The white paper was right, that Satoshi Nakamoto was correct when he said this is a currency that could rebound and do better in an economic downturn. And people will look at this as proof that he was right. And so, of course, it's going to become where people put their money. Yeah, gold and silver will go back up again, and there are going to be those people who no matter what, the people who say that Bitcoin is a scam, buy gold. They're going to stay in gold, and that's fine. They're going to come out of this very wealthy. They're going to come out of this better than they started, absolutely. And I absolutely have a position in silver because it's cheap, it's easy to get. But that's a hedge against Bitcoin because most of my position is in Bitcoin and crypto because I absolutely believe that this is the wave of the future. And it is now showing us that is correct. This is the wave of the future. As we get up here to $10,000 and beyond, people are going to start hearing about Bitcoin coming back faster than even gold. While gold and silver are still dropping, Bitcoin is coming up in value. That's going to attract an awful lot of people. Not just the people who had invested before and gotten out because they were scared of the drop, but new people who may have heard of Bitcoin before but weren't sure what it was or how it worked. They're going to start looking into it. And because again, most of this drop was either people who were over leveraged or institutional investors. Institutional investors don't like risk, at least not on this scale. As it comes back up, those institutional investors are going to come back in and they're going to push it back up to where it was, and they're going to attract, because they're easy for people to institutional investors make it easy for the average person to invest in Bitcoin. They're probably not offering actual Bitcoin, but even so, that's going to, as more people come in and put their money into these different vehicles, these derivatives, these institutional investors are going to invest more into Bitcoin. They're going to push the price back up, and it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The farther up the price goes, the more people come in. The farther up the price goes, the more people come in, and it will push it back up to new highs. By May, we may be at $12,000, $15,000. By the halving, it's very possible we could be $12,000 or $15,000. That would be great, and that would start pulling a lot more people in. After the halving, the sky's the limit. We're going to hit, after the halving, we will go ahead and we are going to bounce up and get above these all-time highs at 20,000 and continue up. And we absolutely are going to end up with a much more valuable Bitcoin. I still see $200, $250, even a $400,000 Bitcoin as a possibility at this point. This is just a hiccup. This was a standard drop in Bitcoin. I mean, let's face it, where the Dow and the NASDAQ and all those the stocks, where they had massive drops that were unheard of in history. The third largest drop, the second largest drop, the largest drop in a single day. Those are all historic events for a stock market. Bitcoin, it dropped 40%. Who cares? It's done it before. It's nothing unusual. Certainly not that unusual. It's a day in Bitcoin. Nobody who's been in this for any length of time batted an eyelash at this. So, yeah. I fully expect to come out of this much more well off than I went into it. This black swan is only good for Bitcoin. Only good can come from this, because investors who lost a bunch of money in the stock market are going to look at Bitcoin and see how fast it's rebounding. They're going to find ways to come into Bitcoin, and their money's going to push the price up much higher. Anyway, that's what I wanted to tell you this week, is don't panic. This is only good. Only good is going to come from this. Until next week, keep hodling.